All right, so this is our last week of lessons during this shelter in place time. So we are going to do two lessons about circles. So this first lesson is just kind of like what does the equation of a circle look like? And how can we write the equation of a circle when we are given some information. And then the next lesson will focus a bit on graphing circles when given the equation. So the general form of the equation of a circle is x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. So in this equation, we have our typical x and y appearing. The h and the k are the center of the circle. And then the radius is r. So we end up having r squared over here, but the radius is just r. So, like I said, we're going to practice writing the equation of these circles. So here, you are given a center and the radius. So if you think about what that looks like, if you have the center of a circle and you know the radius of it, then you know, obviously not drawn to scale, but that should be in the center. So, it would come a little bit more out. Then you'd be able to graph it. So the center here is 5, 2, and again, the center is represented by h, k, and then r is 7. So we're just going to plug all of that in to this general form of the equation. So we're going to have x minus h, which is 5, squared, plus y minus k, which is 2, squared, equals r squared, which would be 7 squared. And that's it. It was kind of weird to leave it like that, so we would write it as x minus 5 quantity squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 7 squared is 49. So we're just going to actually square that number and write that down. Let's try that one more time. So here the center is negative 3, 4. So we're going to have x minus h. So that's going to be minus negative 3. I'm going to write it like this for now, which is kind of weird. And then y minus 4 equals 2 root 5 squared. So x minus negative 3 will become x plus 3. Y minus 4. And then how do we square 2 root 5? Well, you have to, that's like 2 root 5 times 2 root 5. So you're going to square the 2's and square the root 5's. So 2 times 2 is 4. Root 5 times root 5 is 5. 4 times 5 is 20. So you multiply the 2's and multiply the root 5's. And that's that. That's how you can write the equation when you are given the center and the radius. Now we have two more problems where we're going to do something slightly different. So given the center and another point on the circle, can we write the equation? So up here we were given center and radius. Here we are being given center and another point on the circle. So let's visualize. Center and another point on the circle. So if we're given another point on the circle, that means we can figure out what the radius is. Okay. And there are two ways to do that. One way that you might recall is if you want to find the radius here, you're finding the distance between 2 points, so you can use the distance formula. Okay, so either the distance formula or there's one other method I'm going to show you here. You can actually plug this extra point into your x and your y. So either of those methods works fine. We're going to do both. Okay, so here what we're going to do is first let's just write out what we have. So we know it's going to be x minus, again, the center is this one marked by C, so that's going to be the h and the k. So don't plug these in yet. So we're going to have x minus 4, and then y minus negative 7, that's going to become y plus 7. And we do not know r yet. So to find r, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to plug in the point 5, 3. So we're going to plug in the point 5, 3, which was the given point. We're going to call that xy, because this point should satisfy our equation. So if we plug this in, and then we can solve for r. So let's do it. Okay, so we're going to have now 5. Okay, so I'm plugging that. Let me write out the general one first. X minus 4 squared. Okay, so I'm plugging in the 5 to the x. I'm going to have 5 minus 4. And then y is 3. 3 plus 7 equals r squared. 5 minus 4 is 1. So here I'm getting 1 squared, which is just 1, plus 10 squared equals r squared. And that's going to be 1 squared. 10 squared is 100. This is 1, so this is going to be 101 equals r squared. Or you can think of that as r, so the actual radius would be the square root of 101. You don't have to put the plus or minus because the radius has to be a positive number. So that means that the r here is the square root of 101, but r squared is just 101. Okay, so if you write it this way, you would need to write the square root, but if you write it this way, you would just be left with equals 101. Okay, so finally we will try it using the distance formula. So let's see. We are going to use the origin as the center. So here the center is the origin, which is of course the ordered pair 0, 0. And then this is the extra point that we're given. So in this problem, we're going to try to find r squared using the distance formula. But let's first write out the general. So this would be x minus 0 squared at, oopsies, y minus 0 squared. And again, we don't know r squared. So this time we're going to find it using the distance formula. Okay, so you guys, for the distance formula, we learned this, I think, our very, very first day of this year. But here it is for you. So it's, you just subtract the x values and square it, subtract the y values, square it. Okay, so here, the two x values are negative 5 and 0. So I'm going to do negative 5 minus 0 squared. Of course, here I'm showing all of the work. You don't necessarily need to show every step here. Like you could just write this as negative 5 instead of negative 5 minus 0. And then it's a plus sign. And then it's the y values subtracted. So that's going to be 2 minus 0 squared. Okay, so if the negative 5 comes first in this one, like if you write it first, then you need to write the 2 first in this one, ideally. Even though you end up squaring it, so if you mess up, I don't think it matters. Okay, so now we're going to have, that's negative 5 squared plus 2 squared. Negative 5 squared is 25. 2 squared is 4. And 25 plus 4 is 29. So the distance between these 2 points is the square root of 29. Okay, so in this situation, that distance is not actually r squared, it's just r, because what you're doing is you found the distance between these 2 points, that is r. That's not r squared. Versus in this one, when you're solving it, you start off by solving for r squared. Okay, so this is r, not r squared. So here I can plug in square root of 29, but then when you square it, that means r squared is just 29. So x minus 0, that's kind of silly to write, so you're just going to write x squared. Y minus 0, that's just y squared, equals 29. So this is what the equation of a circle looks like when it's centered at the origin. So this one has a center at 4, -7, but this one has a center at 0, 0. So that is that. In the homework assignment, there are 3 extension problems where you're going to be given, it says, given a circle with blank and blank as the endpoints of the diameter. Okay, so let's just talk about what that means. Okay, so this is for the homework. So you might want to come back. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but the diameter of a circle, remember, is all the way across through the center. So you're being given 2 endpoints of the diameter, which means that you're being given 2 points on the circle, but that the line connecting would go through the center. And to write the final equation of a circle, you're really wanting to know the center. So what you're going to do here is you're going to have to find, how would we find the middle of these 2 points? Well, that is the midpoint. So you want to use the midpoint formula to find the center, okay? You want to use the midpoint formula to find the center. So the midpoint formula is just, you take the average of these x values, so you add them together and you divide by 2. And then you take the average of the y values and you divide by 2. So I'm not doing an actual example, but you're going to take these, add them together, divide by 2, because you want the average of those would be this one. And then you take the average of the y values, and that would be that y value. So that would give you the center, and then you can proceed using the center and one of the points that's given, just like we did in those last 2 problems. Please let me know if you have any questions. The Zoom office hours will be posted on Canvas, and I hope you all have a good week.